Chapter 3, A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. For a while I thought Belinda wouldn't attend the finishing school, or that Daddy would give in to her and postpone it until after the fall. A few times he tottered on the brink of caving into her pleas. She tried desperately to get him to do so, moaning and groaning about not having the summer free to enjoy with her friends. When Daddy vacillated, I helped prop him up again. You know she needs it more than ever, Daddy. It was your good idea. Don't let her pull the wool over your eyes. She'll be more than a handful for us if she has nothing whatsoever to do with her time, I reminded him. He pressed his lips together and held tight, but Belinda didn't give up. Who goes to school in the summer? Only people who failed classes. I didn't fail any classes, she wailed, choosing to make our dinner an hour as unpleasant as she could every night until she got her way. It won't be like going to school, Belinda, Mother told her. It's a special school with beautiful grounds and dormitories, isn't it, Olivia? Yes, I said, with the finest facilities and some of the best teachers. It's still school. I still have to be in a stuffy classroom while the sun is out and my friends are sailing and having fun back here, don't I? Belinda moaned. She pouted, refused to eat, stomped around the house, sulked, and made everyone else miserable. All during the week before she left, Belinda insisted on having her boyfriends and girlfriends come to the house and bid her goodbye as though she were off to war and they would not ever see each other again. Every time someone left, she was in tears. No one will write me or call. They all say they will, but they won't. They'll forget me quickly, she complained through her sobs. If that happens, that will show you that they weren't really good friends anyway, I told her. That's right, Mother echoed. Oh, poop, she cried, her face red with frustration, and ran up to her room. Actually, I enjoyed her last-minute antics, enjoyed her stream of complaints, her sobbing and sulking. From my expression, she saw that she could find no sympathy in me, and no matter what she said to Mother, no matter what disaster she predicted, Mother found a silver lining. You'll meet new people and make new friends, see interesting new things, learn so much. What an opportunity for you, Belinda dear. I wish I was young and going off to a finishing school too. And I wish I was old and past all this, she fired back, with tears flying off her cheeks. That made me laugh. Belinda wishing herself old. You don't know what being old is, I told her. As soon as you see the first wrinkle on your face, you'll threaten to commit suicide. I will not. You're being dreadful to me, Olivia. You'll miss me when I'm gone, she threatened, which only made me laugh harder and made her sulk more. Finally, the day of her departure arrived. She did little to make herself ready. Carmelita had to pack everything with Mother's supervision. She wouldn't even pack her own toiletries. We were all supposed to go up with her in a limousine, but I managed to get out of the trip. Daddy was disappointed. No one could handle Belinda and the family as well as I could. However, I was determined not to sit in the car for hours and hear her whine about how cruel we're all being to her. She put on an award performance when Daddy told her to come out and get in the car. She stood on the walkway, looked back at me, her eyes filled with tears. Goodbye, Olivia, she said, her hands clutched to her heart. Goodbye, house. Goodbye, times of childhood and being young and having fun. They're turning me over to the ogres and the teachers with whips in their eyes who will make me feel like some sort of mistake. I'll have to go to get help when I'm tired and lonely. She paused and looked at me. Stop smiling, Olivia. You know I'm not exaggerating. You were there. You know what it's like. Belinda, you will stop being spoiled if that's what you mean. And for once, you might have to consider someone else's feelings before you consider your own, I said. You're just being mean. I hate you. She spit at me and turned to the car. But before she got in, she looked back at me. Please call me, Olivia. Call me tonight, please, she pleaded. I'll call you, I promised. Now stop being spoiled brat and make things easier for everyone, I ordered. She sucked her sobs and took a deep breath like someone having to go underwater and got in the car. I had to smile. Maybe I would miss her, I thought, but I hoped she would change a little, grow up just a little bit, and do just as I said, make life easier for us all. A deceptive period of calm did follow Belinda's departure. Daddy and I were busy with his companies. Belinda called and cried over the telephone for a few days and then gave up. It looked like we might have an uneventful summer after all. Now that Belinda was safely and securely filed away like some embarrassing set of documents, Daddy turned more of his attention to me, and without my realizing it, arranged for me to have a date with Clayton Kaiser, the son of our accountant. There was nothing subtle about it. On the way home from our offices one day, Daddy told me the Kaisers were coming to our home for dinner on Friday. I had met Clayton before, of course. He's 5 years older than I, and he too worked for his father now and had graduated from college. I had never given him more than a passing glance, and during the whole time I knew him and his family, I had spoken a little more than a dozen words with him. Clayton's father, Harrison Kaiser, looked like he had been discovered by a casting director to play the role of an accountant. He was a slim, beady-eyed man, obsessed with details, no matter how small or insignificant they might be to other people. His son Clayton was practically a clone. They both had small round faces and large brown eyes and thin noses with the tiniest nostrils. Clayton also inherited his father's pasty complexion and soft, very feminine lips. The only gift from his mother's side was his auburn hair, rich and thick, which he cut close to his head, almost military style. I was too many classes behind him to remember him in school, but I knew he was unathletic, the quintessential bookworm, with his thick glasses and meek manner. Although he was an excellent student, he wasn't a class valedictorian because the school policy averaged physical education grades. Daddy told me there was a big argument about it at the time, but the policy wasn't changed to suit Clayton. I thought the teachers and administrators simply didn't want him to be the valedictorian and represent the best of the school in front of all the parents and the guests. Clayton wasn't more than 2 or 3 inches taller than I. He was very slim, almost fragile looking, quiet, but with a scrutinizing look that made me feel as if he was assessing my assets and liabilities on some net worth document entitled Olivia Gordon. I was oblivious at first to what Daddy and Harrison Kaiser had plotted and didn't notice how much of the conversation at dinner that might centered around both Clayton and myself until Daddy finally said, maybe Clayton should ask Olivia to the opening of that new show at the Sea and Shore Art Gallery. I think they share interests in art. I know I turned a shade brighter than crimson. My eyes darted from Daddy to Clayton to my mother, who sat smiling like a Cheshire cat. Not a bad thought, eh, Clayton? Harrison Kaiser followed quickly. No, sir. Well then, his father coaxed, nodding in my direction. Clayton looked up from his plate at me as if he had just realized I was there too. He dabbed his lips with his napkin and cleared his throat. Yes, how would you like to go to dinner and the gallery opening, Olivia? Clayton asked in front of the entire table. It might as well have been declared on the front pages of the local newspapers. Nevertheless, for the moment I couldn't speak. It was as if my vocal cords had declared a mutiny. I saw Daddy staring at me expectantly. And finally, I gathered enough air in my lungs to utter a response. Of course it was yes. What else could I do? The conversation then turned to what was the best restaurant for us to go to before the opening. Clayton had no opinion, and neither did I. In fact, our entire evening was planned by our parents, as if we were pieces on a chessboard. Clayton's father suggested we go to the men's shop to get a new suit and tie. His mother thought he should do something different with his hair. My mother talked about the dress that she had just seen, a dress that she decided would be perfect for me for such an occasion. The four of them continued their discussion of our arranged date without once turning to either Clayton or myself and asking us our opinion or reaction. Clayton glanced at me a few times, but for most of the dinner he sat with his eyes directed downward, concentrating on eating as he lifted the spoon and fork with his father's precision, blotting his lips with his napkin almost in synchronization with his father. They were so alike it was frightening. At the end of the evening, before the Kaisers left, Clayton finally turned to me. Everyone stopped talking as though the prince was about to utter some royal edict. I'll come at about 6:15, if that's all right with you, he said. It will take 15 minutes to get to the restaurant, which will leave us an hour for dinner, and then it's about 12 minutes from the restaurant to the gallery. I felt as if I should synchronize my watch with this. I simply nodded. He pressed his lips together, which was his best effort to smile. And then turned to join his parents at the door. Everyone said goodnight, and they left. Immediately, I spun on Daddy. Why did you do that? I felt like I was trapped and had to say yes. He's a fine young man, distinguishing himself in his father's firm. Such young men are not so easily found these days, Olivia. I'd like to find my own young man, I said. I could see the reply on Daddy's face. You're not making any attempt to do so. I'm just trying to help you, my dear. Surely there's no harm in testing the waters. It'll cost you nothing but your own time, he added, strongly reminding me that I was doing nothing else with it. And then there's the new showing at the gallery. You like that sort of thing, don't you? Bottom line is it's no big sacrifice. I know, Daddy, but your father's right. You should go out more, dear, Mother said. You should be seen socializing. Even if things don't work out between you and Clayton, other young men will see you dressed and all beautiful. That's something I'd like to know. That's how wonderful things happen, she continued. We'll have such fun fitting you for a dress, finding your shoes and getting you some new costume jewelry, going to the hairdresser. I realized that this was something Mother had wanted to do for herself as well as me. With Belinda gone, there wasn't much talk about romance in the house. All right, I said, relenting. But I can't imagine myself having a good time with Clayton Kaiser. You never know about these things, dear, Mother said. When I first went out with your father, I thought the same thing. You did not, Daddy remarked quickly. I never told you, Winston, but I was deathly afraid of you that first night. Really? He said, smiling, as if that was something which he could be proud. Everyone told me to be careful. Winston Gordon is a man who gets what he wants and wants a great deal. He has an insatiable appetite, Mother explained. Daddy's eyes flitted from her to me and then back to her for a quick smile. Well, maybe that was true then, but I've become somewhat more restrained in my maturity. I try to find a balance, analyze everything carefully. Even this arranged date for me, Daddy? I said with a bitter smile. He thought for a moment, then nodded. Yes. Yes, Olivia, I think this is a sensible young man. I hope you enjoy your evening, he concluded, and went off to smoke a cigar. Mother lost herself in the flurry of activity that week, preparing for me and my perfect date. As it turned out, the dress she thought was just right was not, and she insisted we go to Boston. I tried to change her mind. It's not that important of an event for me, Mother. It's just a date. I even hate that word. It's not a date. It's a scheduled event, I said. Nonsense. Every young woman goes out in public, socializing. It's a major event, Olivia. There's no harm in making yourself as attractive and presentable as possible, is there? I guess not, I said reluctantly. Maybe she was right, I thought. Maybe I was not putting enough emphasis on myself, my looks, my image. Maybe it was time to be more of a woman than a successful daughter. I let her lead me out, have me measured, pampered, styled and dressed until I dared not look at myself in the mirror, and concluded, I too could be very attractive and pretty, and I too could break men's heart. Belinda did not have a monopoly on beauty in this family. It was time I gave her some competition. Precisely at 6:15, on the night of the gallery opening, Clayton drove up to our house and he pressed the door buzzer. I waited upstairs, my heart pounding, mostly because of sheer nervousness. I was just like an actress with stage fright, unsure that my feet would move forward. I had no reason to be insecure. My hair was cut and shaped into the most fashionable style. I wore a sparkling gold and diamond necklace and the gold earrings with tiny pearls. Mother gave me 2 of her rings as well, and my dress was made of emerald green silk with a V-necked shaped neckline that plunged further than I would have liked. Mother insisted I put makeup on my neck and breastbone with just a touch of rouge on the part of my bosom that was visible. Many times I chastised Belinda for looking too seductive. Now I struggled not to chastise myself. Up until the time Clayton arrived, Mother hovered over me like a magic sylph, fluttering her tiny wings, touching a strand of hair here, brushing out a crease there, straightening my necklace and checking to make sure my perfume wasn't too strong or too weak. Oh, you're beautiful, Olivia. You really are. Belinda would be deathly jealous, she said, which brought a smile to my face. Belinda had called that afternoon, and Mother kept her abreast my preparations, and Belinda moaned and whined about not being able to see me. I'm stuck here learning how to walk with a book on my head and sit properly and stand properly and choose the right fork and spoon while you go out on dates. It's not fair, Olivia. You've gone on many dates, Belinda. One too many, I reminded her coldly. And besides, while I was in finishing school learning these things, you were having more good times than you should. Oh, poop, she cried. If you really cared about me, you'd get Daddy to have my prison sentence reduced up here. That's all this place is, Olivia, a fancy prison for snobs. I haven't been able to make a single friend. I just see lots of nostrils. They all hold their noses too high. I had to laugh at her. I'm absolutely terribly miserable. Even the male teachers are like old ladies. They don't give me a second look unless it's to teach me something stupid like how to correctly address someone for the first time. Just think of how accomplished you'll be when you graduate, I said. I don't care, she said, and started to catalog a whole new set of complaints. I've got to go, I interrupted. I have too much to do to waste any more time. Then go. Go have a wonderful time and then think of me locked up and chained by rules, she concluded. I heard the door buzzer and sucked my breath. That's Clayton, Mother declared. She opened my bedroom door as if she were pulling back a stage curtain. Have a good time, Olivia. Thank you, Mother, I said. Carmelita had let Clayton in. He stood in the foyer looking up as I descended. I thought he resembled a bank teller in his suit and tie, waiting to receive a deposit. I hoped he would stop being so stiff when we were alone. Daddy came rushing out of his office. Well now, looky here. Doesn't she look beautiful, Clayton? He urged. Yes, sir, he said and turned to me. You look very nice. Thank you. Carmelita stood off to the side, watching without expression. When I turned to her, however, her eyebrows rose and took a look of genuine surprise on her face. It made me feel more confident. I guess I did look beautiful. I only wish Clayton would have been more demonstrative when he spoke and looked at me. Well, he said, gazing at his watch, we're on schedule. Shall we go? Yes. Good night, Daddy, I said. Have a good time, both of you, he called. Clayton's car was immaculate. He opened the door for me and I got in and remarked about it as soon as he got in. It's 5 years old, he said, without gratitude for the compliment. It's more like he expected it. You really have to keep a car about 7 years these days to make most of your investment, he said, and then went on to talk about depreciation schedules. When we sat in the restaurant and were given our menus, Clayton reviewed each entree, explaining the cost and value to me. We handle a dozen restaurants, he continued, so we know what the best values are. Why don't you just order for me then, I said dryly and handed the waiter my menu. I would be very happy to do that, Clayton said, and did. Finally, his conversation turned to something other than assets and liabilities, or at least I thought it did, when he began to ask me questions about myself. The work I did for my father, and what I did to entertain myself. Throughout the course of the meal, he glanced at his watch and commented on how we were doing. Most of the time he concluded we were on schedule, but when the desserts he had ordered took longer than he anticipated, he became a little agitated. We really don't have to be there just when it all begins, Clayton, I said. He looked at me as if being late was something of a violation of the 11th commandment. People are known by their sense of responsibility, how well they keep schedules, he assured me. That's why our clients feel confident about doing business with our firm. Oh, well, not everything is business, Clayton. In the end, he insisted everything is business. I didn't feel like arguing. We had our desserts, and I let him rush me along. He remarked that we arrived at the galleries 2 minutes later than he anticipated, but it would be all right. Thank goodness, I said. I was beginning to worry. He nodded, missing my sarcasm. Many of the people who attended knew both Clayton and me. I saw the look of amusement. I saw the look of amusement in their eyes when they realized we were on a date. Many of them had nice things to say about my appearance. Clayton did appear to know a great deal about art, but he managed to evaluate each piece in terms of its potential market value. Deciding which would be a good investment and which wouldn't. Maybe some people want to buy it because they like it, I remarked, and not for how much money it might bring them in 20 years. You should always consider what something's going to be worth down the line, he retorted. No matter what you do from birth to death. I was beginning to think Clayton Kaiser had no emotions, no heart, just a calculator in his chest. However, after we planned to be allotted time at the gallery, he surprised me by asking if I'd like to see a piece of property he was considering purchasing. I think it's a perfect location for a house, he said. Just far enough from people to give yourself privacy, but not as far as you'd feel out of touch. And there's a view, he added, which of course raises its potential value. Of course, yes, I'd like to see it, I said. Do we have enough time left on our schedule, I kidded, but he didn't smile. I believe so, yes. We drove about 2 miles out of Providencetown, south of the highway, until he slowed down and made a turn up the side of the road. It was barely a road, with only a gravel bed, but it ended on land that rose when it sloped down toward the sea. There was a wonderful view of the night sky. Well, he said, this is a beautiful place. You're right, Clayton. Thank you, he said. Should we get out? I asked after a long silent moment. No, it might be muddy or rough out there. You can see it from here anyway, he replied dryly. But he didn't start the engine. Again, a long silence passed. Clayton, I said. He turned quickly before I could react, leaned forward and kissed me. It took me by such surprise I was speechless. I thought I might even laugh. It was the most awkward kiss in history, I thought. He missed my lips and kissed my cheeks. Olivia Gordon, I do find myself attracted to you, he declared. What? I think we could be very successful together. Clayton, we've just gone on a date for the first time, and I hardly think... He lunged at me again, this time seizing my shoulder so he could pull me toward him. His lips fell on my neck. I started to struggle. He held me tightly, surprising me with the strength in his fingers, and then he practically dove at my breasts, pressing his mouth to them and shoving his tongue into my cleavage. The hot wetness nauseated me immediately. He groped my bosom and maneuvered himself until his weight was on me, his left leg trapping my right leg. I cried out and continued to struggle, but he pressed on, pushing his pelvis against my hip. I felt his gyrations and heard his quickened breathing and moans, and he lowered more and more of his weight on me, and I began to feel like someone drowning, someone being pushed underwater. I managed to get my right hand out from between our bodies where it had been locked against his chest and my own, and I began to pound on the top of his head. He didn't seem to mind or feel it. His movements grew more frenzied until he cried out like a man in pain and collapsed against me. For a long moment we lie there motionless. I was afraid to turn or straighten up, afraid that it would ignite some new attack on me. His breathing grew more regular. Then he suddenly sat up, straightened his tie, and wiped back his hair. Thank you, he said. That was very nice. Take me home immediately, I said, with as much command in my voice as I could muster. I was still so surprised and frightened I couldn't stop my heart from pounding. Of course, he said calmly. It's just the right time anyway. He started the engine, and I sat as far from him as I could, my shoulder against the door. He turned the car around and drove down the gravel road, not speaking until we were on the highway. So, he said, you like the property? I'm going to buy it this week. I can build us a beautiful home there. Not me, I said. You can't do anything for me. Pardon? I don't know how or where you got the idea you and I could ever... Just shut up, Clayton. Just take me home. Really, I thought. Oh, well, you should give some consideration to the value of that property and the potential a marriage would bring to our families and ourselves. I said nothing until we reached my house. He started to get out to open my door, but I jumped out of the car and slammed the door before he could come around. Good night, Olivia, he said. Can I see you again? See me again? I said, nearly laughing. I think you're sick and disgusting. I don't ever want to see you again, I said, and rushed up the steps into the house. Both my parents were still up, my mother reading and my father watching late news on television. He lowered the volume immediately after he set eyes on me. Mother put her book on her lap and smiled. A few moments after looking at me, however, the smile evaporated. What happened, Daddy asked, his eyes small. I couldn't hide my emotions from him. Besides, my hair was a mess and I looked like I had tumbled down a hill. Clayton is an oaf, I replied. What happened, Mother asked, her lips trembling in anticipation. He was not a gentleman, he pretends to be, I said. Let's leave it like that, okay? I followed, looking at Daddy. All right, he said. No harm done, I suppose. Fortunately, no, I said, and marched up the stairs to my room. When I looked at myself in the mirror and saw how disheveled I looked and how far I was from pretty, put-together young woman I had been earlier that evening, I started to cry. Then I sucked in my tears, telling myself, this is just what Belinda would do. Only Belinda probably would have put up as much of a battle, wouldn't have put up much of a battle. In the days that followed, Daddy never mentioned my date, nor asked any questions. Whenever I saw Harrison Kaiser, I noticed that he looked away. I imagine that Clayton had told a very different story, blaming me for the failure of the relationship. Mother concluded it just wasn't meant to be. Sometimes she had a fatalistic attitude, especially when it came to romance. About 5 days following my disastrous date, my only date in the year, she stopped by at my bedroom and knocked on the open door. How are you doing, Olivia? She asked me immediately, grimaced in anticipation of an unpleasant response. I'm all right, Mother. I'm sorry your date with Clayton wasn't a success. I'm not. I'd hate to imagine what life would be like married to such a creature. She smiled and sat on the bed. My mother and I had never really had what other daughters call their mother-daughter talks. Most of what I knew about men and about sex I had taught myself. On a number of different occasions, Mother had tried to get me into an intimate conversation, but neither of us was very successful at it. Sometimes she began this early evening. I feel to blame for your present situation. I feel I should have done more to help you find someone, Olivia. That's silly, Mother. No, it's not, she insisted. My mother did a great deal to help me, and she was very understanding and sensitive, and a great companion. I'll be just fine, I said. Of course you will, dear. You're too intelligent not to succeed in every way. I know you're far more intelligent than I am, even more intelligent than your father, although I would never dare tell him that. I started to protest, but she put up her hand. Sometimes, however, it's better for women to seem less intelligent, Olivia. What? I started to smile, but saw an expression on her face I hadn't seen before. She looked suddenly wiser, more perceptive. Sometimes a woman can't be as headstrong or as direct as a man. Most of the time, in fact, instead, she has to be more subtle, a bit of a connoisseur. You have to learn how to play a man like an instrument to get what you want, or get him to do what you want. I sat back a bit shocked. What are you saying, Mother? That there's a secret to forming and maintaining a good relationship with a man, and that secret is simply to let the man think he's always in charge. Whenever I want something, really want something, I manage to get your father to think he wanted it first, that it was his idea. That way, he doesn't feel like he's being manipulated. You see? She leaned toward me and smiled, even though he is. I snapped back as if a rubber band held me on the seat. That's not true, Mother. Daddy knows exactly what he's doing all the time, and he never does anything without evaluating the consequences thoroughly. Of course he doesn't, she agreed, but how he evaluates it and how he reaches a conclusion is my little secret. I think you have to relax more when you're in the company of men, Olivia. You act as if what, Mother? As if you have to compete to win something, to show them up, and men don't appreciate that in a woman. You have to work on being more subtle. Be more like Belinda, is that what you're saying? I suppose, in a way, she admitted, nodding. And get pregnant and pop out babies in my room in the middle of the night, I shot back. She stiffened. Of course not, dear. You have to know when to say no and when to be firm. As long as you give them the impression that it's their idea to stop too. Is that it? Yes, she said. Frankly, Mother, I don't want to be that sort of woman, that sort of person. I want to always say exactly what I feel and to be honest as possible. And if a man can't stand that, then he's not the man for me. Oh, pity, she said softly, more to herself than to me. I don't think so, Mother. She looked at me for a long moment, then sighed deeply. I just want you to be happy, Olivia. I will be happy, Mother, but on my own terms, with self-respect, I insisted. Very well. You're so smart, Olivia. I'm sure that you'll find the right man and make the best wife and marriage. She stood up and gazed around my room for a moment. You might do something about brightening your room, dear. Have the walls painted, get new curtains and a new bedspread. It'll be easy to get your father to agree to that, she added, by making it seem like his idea. Yes, exactly. I'm fine, Mother. I'm fine as I am, I said. She nodded and then turned to leave, passing at the doorway. If you ever want to talk, Olivia, I want you to know I always want to talk too. Thank you, Mother. I won't die an old maid, I promise, I said. She smiled as if I'd uttered the magic word, and then she left. I gazed at myself in the mirror. How can you be so certain of that, Olivia Gordon? Who is out there waiting for a woman like you? Surely someone, I thought. Someone who won't mind that I have brains, too. I was about to get up and prepare for dinner when I heard Daddy's heavy footsteps on the stairs. I knew he was practically running, and I went to the doorway. Olivia, he said, you've got to come with me. What is it, Daddy? His face was flushed. Embarrassment, utter embarrassment. I received a call from the finishing school chief administrator, Rosemary Elliott, just a little while ago. What? Your sister's been expelled for immoral activities.